Hey folks, what a great day with the Employment Relations Bill bringing fairness to workplace relations, and finally a plan that I hope everyone can agree on so that we stop flip-flopping and start building more infrastructure.
On infrastructure, the Infrastructure Commission recommends not spending as much on land transport and funneling towards hospitals. Do you agree?
I think what's been missed perhaps is we actually need to ask how do we get the cost of getting the stuff down rather than throw more money at it. So these resource management reforms, making it easier to get stuff consented, health and safety reforms so you can build stuff with a few less cones. I believe you can have both if you don't just focus on how much you're spending, but how you improve the efficiency of the spend. And that's why I always say we need a smaller, more efficient government, and regulation is one of the pathways to get there.
Do you accept that we can't afford to build it all though?
Well, it is absolutely true for every person, every business, every household, every government. There will always be stuff you want you can't afford. Unfortunately, that's just life. But at least now we're having a public discussion, taking the politics out of deciding what we will afford.
Are you concerned about the blowout of the cost of the roads of national significance? For example, do you think we should reassess those? The Commission says we should put our efforts into maintaining and rebuilding our existing network.
Well, a couple of things. I agree that there's a problem trying to pay for everything we want, but regulatory reform can bring down those costs, and there's other ways to pay for them. So a lot of people will say, look, if I have the option of a toll road, I might actually rather take that option rather than have the taxpayer pay for it also. I agree with what the Infrastructure Commission said, that the people who benefit should pay for something, and I think there's a lot of space for that. If you talk to people in the Bay of Plenty, north of Auckland, they'll say, actually, we may not have been sure about toll roads at first, but now we love them because we've got a quality road rather than no road.
Should the NZTA be forced to actually put its plans to the Commission so it can assess them, because it doesn't seem mandatory at this point?
Well, again, once you get into that sort of technicality, I would talk to the minister responsible. But on balance, there's only 5 million of us. We've got too many departments, too much complication. A smaller, more efficient government would talk to itself.
If you have the resources.
Whoa, okay, Benedict.
What did you make of the poll last night in which the public gave the government's performance rating of 5 out of 10?
Well, 5 out of 10 is halfway there. I think that's where we are at fixing what matters. It's interesting, the public also said that they would return the government on those numbers. So I think there's acceptance. It takes a long time to turn a big ship around. We're halfway there, and they want to keep us to keep going on those numbers in your poll.
Just on the infrastructure, if you do have the amount of money that the Infrastructure Commission projects you have, you do your regulatory reform, it doesn't quite get you what you need. Do you agree with where those priorities lie in terms of the relative rankings or importances of health versus roads versus various other?
Yeah, I do, because once you start going out and saying, oh no, we're going to have a bun fight and chop and change every time the government changes, that's the fundamental problem. The reason ACT's always supported this kind of long-term plan is that the political cycle is 3 years. To build a major piece of concrete infrastructure is often 10 years, and you can change government 3 times, hopefully not that often, and not actually get anything built. And we've seen this, right? Like the cycleway plan didn't get built, the light rail in Auckland didn't get built. Meanwhile, they stopped building the roads that we're now restarting. A whole lot of stuff didn't get built because of chopping and changing.
Minister, one of the recommendations, the larger recommendations, was that 60 cents of every infrastructure dollar should go to renewal and maintenance, so keeping what we already have in good nick. It's about 30 cents for the last 10 years. Do you agree with that? Would you commit to keeping that much for infrastructure?
Well, again, I think part of the point is for politicians not to become armchair experts at maintenance. So I'm not going to argue about whether it's 60 cents or another amount. But I just make the point that if you look at the hospitals, you look at the state houses, politicians and even the bureaucrats and officials often don't invest in fixing stuff up because there's no reward in that. There's a political reward in building what's new. This is why I'm actually generally not in favour of public ownership, because the political process doesn't allow for the long term or the things that you can't see, like the leaks in the roof and the cracks in the foundation. And unfortunately, most of New Zealand's hospitals will show you that problem in real life.
Is it surprising to you that we don't have a proper handle on what we own?
No, because if you look at the pipes underneath Auckland, they haven't been fixed because no politician gets a photo opportunity with underground infrastructure. Some people say some of us should, but the reality is that, systematically in politics, the really important stuff that's under the ground gets neglected because it's not politically visible.
Yeah, even just like a register of everything the government owns and the state it's in. Like no one seems to know what assets
Well,
we
it's
have.
it's a symptom of the fact that government is a bad owner. You know, there's people out there who think if the government owns something, that's somehow good for the country, but in practice it means a politician looking after something that's not really theirs on behalf of someone else over a time period that goes beyond their natural career. So I'm actually not surprised. I'm proud to be part of a government where people like Chris Bishop and myself are sitting around the cabinet table saying, no, this stuff matters, even though it's against the usual political incentives.
One of the proposals was a $9 toll on the Auckland Harbour crossing. Now that's both the new harbour crossing that's mooted and the existing harbour crossing. Could you see Aucklanders accepting a $9 toll on an existing bridge?
Well, that's $18 a day, that's $90 a week for somebody that's trying to pay a lot of tough bills already. I think you're going to struggle with that level of price, but you could imagine that maybe at a peak hour when it was mostly buses and ride sharing, maybe for a part of the day, but I don't think making everybody pay $9 with no alternative is going to fly.
Ultimately, those people are using that infrastructure though, whereas someone who's driving a car in Christchurch or Wellington isn't. Should it, and someone has to pay, right? Should the people who use it pay for it?
Yeah, I agree that's true, but there's actually a number of beneficiaries other than the person driving the car. So, for example, property values in the North Shore are a lot higher because we have that car. A lot of businesses in the North Shore pay tax. I guess if you're from Takapuna, you'd probably argue that Auckland is benefiting from having the bridge. But, you know, you see that it's not just the person sitting in the car at that time that's the beneficiary.
Do you think successive governments have kind of underestimated the demographic challenges faced when planning infrastructure? You know, we've got like an ageing population that hasn't factored into hospitals and things like that.
Yeah, look, I mean, our system is set up for the 20th century when people had 3 or 4 children and lived to their 60s or maybe their 70s. Now people have 1 and a bit children and often live into their 80s and 90s. So that has changed the maths of a whole lot of stuff, and it is a major, major challenge for us to adapt to across entitlements, across infrastructure, right across the board. I think we've been slow to come to it. I'd like to say that I think ACT has actually been quite strong on this, often to our political cost, talking about superannuation and so on. But this is one of the biggest things that's happening at the moment, is that people are living longer, having fewer children, and I'm not judging whether that's good or bad, but it certainly changes the maths.
Is the bill that's been introduced to make English, or to confirm that English is an official language of New Zealand, is that a good use of Parliament's time?
Well, you know, there's a lot of people who feel it's important. They want their representatives to reflect their priorities, so that's what we're doing. We're in a coalition government. We formed a government with someone who thought that was very important, and now we're doing it.
If it was up to you, though, would it be a priority for you, or is there more legislation, more substantive legislation that would be a bigger priority for you?
Well, put it this way, I hope that it succeeds, and I hope that it doesn't do the opposite of what its supporters hope and actually put English and Maori on the same level, because I think they'd find that quite disappointing. But hey, let's see how it shows up, how it turns out.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah.
Well, I think there's a lot of people who support the bill. They want English to be made primary, and I just point out one of the effects of the legislation is that it will make English and Maori 2 equal official languages alongside sign language.
How do you build the infrastructure the country needs while also managing spending?
Well, I think actually you build it by managing spending. I just make the point, you know, let's take the figure 200 billion and let's say that's 20 years, that's 10 billion a year. Government's currently spending 140 billion, so it's actually only 7% of government expenditure. Now, if we can't get the government to be 7% more efficient to save that much money to build the infrastructure, I think we should all go home. All right, thank you very much, folks.